Okay, the first entity we'll discuss is a Schwannoma, also known as a neurolemoma. It's a true nerve sheath neoplasm that's made up entirely of Schwann cells, proliferating Schwann cells. And it typically occurs within the perineum, so you'll see the nerve fibers, the normal nerve fibers, will be pushed to the periphery of the tumor, and you'll at times be able to see the residual nerve that's off to the side. It's typically an encapsulated proliferation, and it has a predilection for the flexor extremities, but you can also see it on the head and neck region. It typically grows very slowly, and there's a pigmented variant of a schwannoma called a melanotic schwannoma. I don't have an example of that. That's typically seen in Carney complex. The key features of a schwannoma then, other than the fact that it's comprised of Schwann cells and is typically encapsulated, are the two characteristic features, the Antony A and Antony B areas. So there's typically an Antony type A pattern, which is comprised of a solid proliferation of Schwann cells. And those Schwann cells typically are organized in fascicles and cords. So I'm going to scan around and we'll try to find classic Antony A areas. And right here you can see these fascicles and bundles of cells with almost a rippled appearance on low power. These correspond to the Antony type A areas, or the Antony type A pattern. And these cells that comprise the Antony type A areas are made up of ovoid cells, Schwann cells that have ovoid nuclei, and the nuclei are arranged in a parallel or palisading fashion. So basically what you see are two rows of palisaded nuclei that are kind of separated by this pink collagenous acellular zone. And this structure comprises what is known as the Verroquet body. So the Verroquet body is basically that structure, and it's characteristic of the Antony type A pattern. Now there's a plexiform variant of a schwannoma that is usually comprised mostly of these Antony type A areas, but when you look at a classic schwannoma, it'll have features of both Antony type A and Antony type B areas. So once again, those Antony type A areas comprise of these cells with very ovoid nuclei, kind of organized in a palisading pattern, so you'll have two rows of these ovoid nuclei and then kind of a zone of pink collagenous areas. Has a very classic pattern. Now the Antony type B areas, in contrast, are typically more looser. The stroma looks a little bit more loose. So if we go back on low power, areas like these comprise the Antony type B areas. Very cystic or edematous. You can see these cystic areas here. The stroma looks very edematous. Sometimes you can even see myxoid degeneration within the stroma. And you typically will see a lot more blood vessels in the Antony type B areas. You might see thrombosis, you might see a lot of hemorrhage, you might see hemosiderin, all of which we're seeing here. Lots of hemorrhage, lots of blood vessels, very loose stroma. You might also see an increased number of mast cells. So once again, Antony type B areas look very distinct from Antony type A. As you can see. Now, if you were to get immunohistochemical stains, you would expect the composite cells to be S100 positive. If you were to focus more on the Antony type A areas, those cells would also stain for type 4 collagen. And then the capsule surrounding the schwannoma would be EMA positive. So Antony type A areas interspersed with Antony type B areas with lots of hemorrhage, lots of blood vessels, some vascular thrombosis or congestion are all characteristic features of a schwannoma.